Excessive heat warnings are in place as record-breaking heat builds up across California just in time for the 4th of July. And Hurricane Beryl could become the earliest Category 5 hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic. In this video, we'll be looking at Hurricane Beryl, but we're also going to be looking at how hot it's going to be across California and also the rest of the U.S., and we'll see what the weather could look like across the U.S. on the 4th of July. But first, if you're new here, please be sure to subscribe for more weather updates. We'll take a quick look at Hurricane Beryl. See, in this satellite image, there's still actually a lot of lightning in the eye wall, which does indicate rapid intensification, and it is still intensifying. Now they actually found that the winds have increased to 155 miles per hour, as it did hit the Windward Islands earlier today, and it definitely caused a lot of damage there, but now it's going into the Caribbean and still intensifying, and the winds are up to 155 miles per hour. Once it hits 160, it's a Category 5. If it becomes a Category 5, it's going to be the earliest Category 5 ever recorded in the Atlantic on record. And then we have the disturbance behind it. Still, this one actually is not looking as impressive as it did before, so this one may not develop, and some of the models were actually showing it a lot weaker. Tropical Storm Chris actually did form yesterday and lasted pretty much only one advisory before it hit Mexico, so there's that. But Hurricane Beryl is definitely intensifying. They show 155 miles an hour. The cone actually shows this is headed towards Jamaica. It looks like it could barely miss Jamaica, but some of the models do have it actually directly making landfall in Jamaica as a potentially a Category 3 hurricane, maybe even a little stronger than that, depending on how this goes, and if it does weaken further west in the Caribbean, if the conditions get more unfavorable. But still a hurricane, and then it hits the Yucatan, and then goes on the other side as a strong tropical storm, and possibly turns towards Texas, as some of the model guidance shows. This is the intensity guidance. It could hit a Cat 5. That's what some of the newest models are showing. It could go up to a Category 5 briefly, and that's what I think will probably happen before it does start to probably weaken down. To what degree, we'll see. Like, if it does hit the Yucatan, that will definitely weaken it down quite a bit. And, the models do take it very close to Jamaica or slightly south, and then it smashes into the Yucatan. That's pretty much what's going to happen. And then on the other side, we'll see what happens. It looks like it could hit the same place that Alberto and Chris basically hit. So, 3 systems in the same place. And it could hit the coast of northeastern or eastern Mexico, or it could go into South Texas, or maybe even turn towards Louisiana. So that's what Hurricane Beryl's doing. But this extreme heat is a really big deal, because you have potentially what looks like record-breaking heat going to happen across California over the next few days. And this was today, kind of extreme heat risk in some areas across Texas and Louisiana, but major heat risk across the south and even the southern plains in Oklahoma. A lot of moderate heat risk across the south as well, and the southwest, even up into Kansas. So not really an extreme heat event, but what happens is tomorrow, Tuesday, that heat really starts building. Major heat risk across California, moderate heat risk across Arizona, so it'll be hot, but more normal for July in Arizona. And then we have, a lot of heat building up across Texas, Louisiana, even the Gulf Coast a little bit, Mississippi, Alabama, even the Florida Panhandle, major heat risk across Florida, and then Oklahoma, under major to even extreme heat risk on Tuesday, July 2nd. And Wednesday, July 3rd, it gets worse. The heat does expand a little bit further to the north and east into, the Kentucky, Tennessee, even up into Ohio with the major heat risk, but still some extreme heat risk down in Texas. And then the extreme heat risk really shows up across California in the Sacramento Valley. You have, major to extreme heat risk. Wait till you see the temperatures in the, over 110 degrees. And then July 4th is where it gets even hotter. You have some, still Texas really under a lot of that heat, but the heat does expand up sort of across the south but really up the west coast where you do have a lot of moderate heat risk, but extreme heat risk across California, especially, the Sacramento Valley, even, the southeastern California, kind of the desert areas, but especially, in this whole area, you have a lot of major to extreme heat risk with record-breaking temperatures, and then it gets even worse for Friday, July 5th, and just extreme heat risk for multiple days in a row, and it gets worse. So this is not just 4th of July, but actually for, several days. And then you have what basically happens is more extreme heat across California, even, on July 6th, and then major heat risk reaching up into Washington. And then even on Sunday, July 7th, the heat even is still extreme heat risk across the, especially in kind of the Fresno area, in that, Central Valley, and then across southeastern California as well. So that's definitely, an extreme heat wave. And this is kind of what the NAM 3-kilometer model is showing with some of that heat. You can see temperatures, low temperatures in the, kind of the 70s, maybe 80s. Up in the higher elevations, you could have low temperatures in the 50s, so not that bad for tonight. And then going into tomorrow, Tuesday, temperatures get almost close to 110 degrees, especially towards Fresno. Temperatures of 111 degrees, in that whole southwestern Arizona, southeastern California, in the desert, you could have temperatures 110, even close to 115 degrees. Then it does cool down, and then it comes back up. And this is where it gets more intense. This is July 3rd, the day before 4th of July. You have temperatures possibly getting close to 116 near Fresno and Bakersfield, that whole area, the southern part of the Central Valley. And then, temperatures in the low 80s at night. And this continues even past that point, because what happens is you have, some of those temperatures going into the 110s, possibly, the Euro model is showing it even hotter than what the NAM was showing, but the NAM 3-kilometer model is more high resolution, but basically, still really hot temperatures. This is on 4th of July, possibly in the, 110-ish degrees. And then it really gets even hotter, going into possibly close to 120 degrees near Reading. That's some extreme heat. This is expected to be record-breaking heat, and even 120 degrees in southeastern California. And then this continues, possibly getting, this is where it gets even more extreme. This is just totally record-breaking heat going into Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon. Possibly 122 degrees in Reading. That's an extreme. I don't think it's gonna get that hot, but this model is definitely, painting the picture of some definitely extreme heat, and it continues on Sunday, and then even into Monday, it starts to get a little less intense, but still some very extreme heat, especially across the southeastern California. That's what it looks like. So over the next 10 days, still just a lot of heat over the southwestern U.S., especially California. And this is expected to be record-breaking. This is kind of, where they're expecting all these record-breaking temperatures. This was today. This is tomorrow. And then Wednesday, it just keeps building up. And then you even have a lot more record-breaking heat across the, 4th of July, across, all the way from Oregon down to California and Arizona. And then this continues all the way into the 6th, the 7th. So this is all the way to July 7th. It could continue even past this point with all that extreme heat. This is the the Euro model kind of showing all those well above average temperatures. Let's change this over to the GFS. You could actually see it for even further out. Definitely all that heat really going all the way into July 9th before some places on the west coast start to cool down. But, still very above average temperatures, especially across the northwest, all the way through mid-July. And then temperatures cool down in the southwest. We'll see what happens with that. But definitely a lot of heat over California. And it's not just California, actually. There are heat warnings across, there's excessive heat warnings across California, of course, but even excessive heat watches even up to Oregon, and then heat advisories, excessive heat warnings across the southern plains and the south a little bit as well. So, it's not just California, it's also even the southern plains, because you'll see what happens like in Oklahoma, that heat really builds up, temperatures, 105-ish degrees. And the thing is, like in the south, it's going to be more humid, so the heat index will be higher than what it'll be in the southwest. The heat index could be lower than the actual temperature in the southwest because the heat is going to be more dry. And so there's that. But the Euro model taking those high temperatures, really just building across, especially the west coast is just being just totally cooked. And the south, it's gonna be hotter there, but not even as much heat over there. As it's really concentrated over the west coast, especially over the next several days. And this could last a while. And even the heat index goes into the possibly 110 degrees across the south in Arkansas. So the more heat with humidity, which is even worse. And yeah, it really builds, going into 4th of July, pretty hot. But actually 4th of July could be a slight cool down from some of the other days. It's like, because it even goes up the East Coast with heat indexes in the Carolinas up to 110. Yeah, this heat does, expand over a lot of places. It does start to tone down, possibly as we go towards like July 10th, potentially. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, for your 4th of July forecast, what it looks like is that, definitely a lot of heat across California. You're going to have temperatures, in the upper hundreds, possibly approaching the 110s. Even near Redding, temperatures apparently could get towards 116 degrees, possibly, about 115. So this could near records, maybe even break a few records. And then across the southwest, highs in the 115, even approaching 120 in some places. So definitely a lot of extreme heat. And then even across the rest of the U.S., definitely pretty hot in the south, and kind of going up the East Coast a little bit. Temperatures in the 90s, even approaching 100. But then, in the north central U.S., high temperatures could be, in the 70s. Even the 80s in the Northeast, but still definitely nowhere close to what it's going to be like across the Southwest with those high temperatures, approaching or going towards 110 degrees. And then the low temperatures could be pretty warm across the South, even the East Coast, in the 70s, possibly in the low 80s in some areas closer like to Florida. Low temperatures could be in the upper 80s across the Southwest, especially in Arizona, southeastern California, and then even in the high 60s, maybe going into the 70s across California. And further north, low temperatures in the 50s. And then the weather throughout the day, really, you could have actually some scattered kind of severe thunderstorms across the Midwest, the kind of the central U.S. potentially. While of course, it's over the western U.S., it's going to be pretty dry. Not anything really happening there. And then the SPC does have a slight risk of severe weather already for Kansas, eastern Kansas, and most of Missouri for that severe weather potential. Here's the supercell composite. Definitely shows, it is pretty high over eastern Kansas, even Missouri, even going into Illinois and Indiana, because that slight risk will probably expand. But you know, the total rainfall for that day for the July 4th, possibly 1 to 2, maybe closer to 3 inches across especially across the Midwest, where there's still that kind of daily kind of explosion of thunderstorms with that. And then of course the western US, totally really hot and dry, and even across Texas, even pretty dry for July 4th. Not really a lot of rain except in the Midwest, even though Ohio area definitely could see quite a bit of rain from the thunderstorms. So that's your July 4th forecast. Basically, the weather pattern in general is pretty interesting, because what you have is pretty huge ridge building up across the west. That's what's really going to be pushing in, and this ridge gets even bigger and more intense after July 4th. By July 8th, July 9th, it's really in place across the western U.S. And then it looks like that ridge just gets even bigger and really pushes over across most of the U.S. And here's the kind of the height anomaly. It shows really you could have some slight troughing going through the Midwest. That's going to help generate some severe weather. And then that huge ridge over the western U.S., especially, it's well above average heights, especially as you go over towards the northwest. And this ridge is pretty intense. It got up to 600 decameters on the chart, which is actually pretty. Yeah, that's a pretty strong, pretty intense mid-level high pressure system. So yeah, there's going to be some definitely extremely hot temperatures across California, and then it does look like towards mid-July it starts really expanding up across a lot of the U.S. We'll see what happens there. The GFS takes it out a little bit further. With that, you can see that yeah, some of those troughs. This is a bit more intense. This would definitely generate some severe weather out ahead of that, and then this keeps kind of happening. So you could have I think there will be a lot of slight risk days with severe weather, which there already are, and then that ridge definitely takes over pretty much the entire U.S. under above average heights, and so definitely a lot of summer temperatures going to overtake I think a lot of the U.S., but especially the western U.S. over the next few days. And here's just what the kind of simulated rain would look like. You have potentially some storms going through the Midwest. Some strong winds, hail. Just the severe thunderstorms. And then this continues even into July 4th, and then past that you have just pretty much every day some thunderstorms, potentially severe thunderstorms somewhere in the U.S., especially the eastern 2/3 of the U.S. really getting a lot of rain and thunderstorm activity over the next 10 days. Here's the Storm Prediction Center has for today that there's a slight risk. They actually cut some of that because we already did have whatever storms we were going to have across the northern kind of central plains. You have still a slight risk in place for that, but tomorrow is an enhanced risk. It's a little more severe weather activity, kind of, which we did see that decent line of storms going through there, and that's going to be mostly wind, of course. And then day 3 going into Wednesday, you do have a slight chance of severe weather east of like the Colorado, going into Nebraska, Kansas, and then also across the from southern Illinois going up towards Ohio. But 4th of July, definitely a slight risk of severe weather there. And then they don't have any more severe weather out there right now, but I think there will be, definitely a lot of slight risks of severe weather going forward. And this is just a supercell composite for pretty much this is going into the next few days. Even, it's not that much, but still isolated severe weather potential. Now, the GFS, this is, as you go way too far out, they actually do have, possibly a big severe weather outbreak happening across the Midwest. That may or may not happen. We'll see what happens with that in mid-July. But this is, the NAM model showing the supercell composite, really showing, here's, our enhanced risk potential right there. And then going into July 4th, possibly, some isolated severe weather there. And, it's still across this kind of Kansas all the way across to Illinois, Indiana, maybe a little bit of Kentucky, Missouri, that this whole kind of central U.S. kind of area could see some storms there. With all these storms, the total rainfall could add up quite a bit, like this is just over the next 10 days, you have really the western U.S. seeing nothing, no rain at all, and then do have, like, in the southwest, possibly, an inch or two, with some of the thunderstorms, but, the south and the east coast and the Midwest really getting just soaked with a couple inches of rain over the next 10 days, with the daily showers and thunderstorms there. That's pretty much what's supposed to happen over the next few days. Thanks for watching this video. Please be sure to like the video, share the video, and hit the subscribe button for more weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone, out.